Business has always been about turning a profit, making money. But can it stand for something more? Something beyond dollars and cents? We think so. We think that today, business has a higher calling, a purpose to be fair and just, to do right by their workers, customers, communities, and the environment. And it turns out companies successful doing that also do better for their bottom line. When you see the Just Capital seal, it means this company is a force for good. Visit justcapital.com to learn more.
Good evening and Happy New Year. This is Mottek On Money, number one for your business and consumer news. You're on Talk Radio 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here, and we're doing it live, and we're doing more in 2024. Weeknights here on Los Angeles. Mottek On Money, your news-driven business hour, 5 nights a week for you, live on the air right here on 790 KBC. Streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and you're on demand. Mottek On Money podcast at kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, and all your favorite podcast platforms, and yes, on the socials too. Mixed start to the new year on Wall Street. Happy New Year for the Dow, hitting a record high close today, kicking off the new year with a gain of 25.5 points to settle at 37,715. Yep, that's a new record high close. The S&P 500, though, slipped 27, and the NASDAQ gave back 245 points as the tech names took a hit on an analyst downgrade of Apple, one of the so-called Magnificent Seven stocks. Mixed finish today following soft economic news out of China today, which raised concerns about the health of the global economy, also rising oil prices on heightened tensions in the Middle East. The analyst downgraded Apple, one of the Magnificent Seven stocks, wasn't helping the overall market either, but the Dow managed a closing gain good enough for a record high to kick off the new year. Shares of Apple starting the new year with a sell-off after an analyst at Barclays said it was time for a breather for Apple, citing weak hardware sales as iPhone 15 demand seems to be disappointing. We did see shares of Rivian, the EV truck company, finishing 10% lower today following 2023 delivery reports from the EV maker. Rivian said it delivered 50,122 vehicles last year. That was a 146% increase over the past year, but looks like analysts were expecting more deliveries. Taking a look at another mover today, we see shares of Tesla down slightly, trading a bit lower after the company's fourth quarter delivery report did beat analyst expectations. Shares of Moderna, remember that one? During the pandemic, Moderna shares, the pharmaceutical company, up 13% today following a stop upgrade to buy. Oppenheimer analyst notching the stock to outperform from perform. Well, the national debt very much in focus. We're getting a new report on that it eclipsed $34 trillion several years sooner than pre-pandemic projections. According to the Congressional Budget Office, January 2020 projections had the gross federal debt eclipsing $34 trillion in 2029. But here we are already at that level. The federal government's gross national debt has surpassed $34 trillion, a record high that foreshadows the coming political and economic challenges to improve America's balance sheet in the coming years. Of course, nervous time in the Middle East with the war between Israel and Hamas continuing. Oil prices were up more than 2% early today before giving back some gains due to escalating tensions in the Red Sea. The reports that an Iranian warship had entered the Red Sea spooked the markets. The report citing Iran's news agency, which did not provide details of the ship's mission. The U.S. military over the weekend said its forces opened fire on Houthi rebels after they attacked a Maersk-operated cargo ship in the Red Sea, killing several rebels and destroying 3 boats in an escalation of the maritime conflict in the Red Sea linked to the war in Gaza. Big news today with Harvard University President Claudine Gay resigning from that position today, capping a dramatic fall from power fueled by both her response to anti-Semitism on campus and mounting allegations of plagiarism. She famously was questioned in Congress, and we'll talk about that. 2 university presidents, 2 of the 3 who testified that day before a congressional panel have now resigned. There's calls for the resignation of the 3rd. Of course, it has a big business component. Bill Ackman, the CEO of Pershing Square Capital, has been vocal demanding the resignation of all 3 of those university presidents. Big news in Beverly Hills today. The French food group Danone said it had signed a deal to sell its premium organic dairy units in the United States to investment firm Platinum Equity, based in Beverly Hills. The sale of the Horizon Organic and Wallaby businesses, part of the company's portfolio review and asset rotation program. The company announced about a year or so ago. Danone making that announcement without disclosing the financial details of the deal. Platinum Equity also did not respond immediately to requests for comments, according to the Reuters news service. Well, Bitcoin is on a roll here, above 45,000 once again, and could reach an all-time high this year with the potential to end the year at around 80,000, according to analysts at Alliance Bernstein. That's being reported today, so we're watching what's happening with crypto. Crime in focus big time in Los Angeles heading into the new year. Ian Ziering, remember him from Beverly Hills 90210, the TV show? Well, he was attacked over the weekend on Hollywood Boulevard. Also, a stolen Maserati, believe it or not, has been found in a homeless encampment in Los Angeles. I'll discuss the latest crime reports. And LA DA George Gascon now facing a growing list of challengers for the DA's office this year. I'll talk about all that, and I'll talk about it with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer with about 56 years of service to the City of Angels, also, of course, former LA City Council member. And prominent public relations, media expert, and best-selling author Michael Levine will be joining me live later this hour to discuss the resignation of the Harvard president today. But first, on your markets, the economy, and the whole works tonight, and a Happy New Year, we say to Ken Winans, money manager, president of Winans Investments, author of Investment Atlas 1 and 2, market historian, and also Forbes magazine contributor. We see you have 2 new articles up at Forbes. Ken, congratulations on that, and Happy New Year to you, sir. And thanks for being such a great friend and contributor, one of the longest contributors to this program over the years. Happy New Year, Ken. Thanks for taking the call here tonight.
My pleasure, Frank. And, it's funny. I thought there's only a handful of people I know that I went through the dot-com bubble with back from 2000 to 2002, and you are one of them. So
wow.
We're in a very sad fraternity, so to speak. But as we finish, again, as I'm calling it, the great whipsaw of 2022, 2023, in most asset categories, including, you just mentioned Bitcoin. I mean, there's a lot of people are beginning to take stock on this and realize that maybe volatility is here to stay. But as you mentioned, there's still a lot of mixed messages out there, and there's economic mixed messages, it's political mixed messages, and you get the cross currents of these. And I have a feeling that will be a theme as we go through 2024. But one thing, and I've had to caution people on this a couple of times, a drop in inflation does not mean an elimination of inflation. And unfortunately, I think a canary that Southern California had to go through last year with the entertainment industry strike, I think we're going to see a lot of that unfortunately, as we go through January, February, March, and people are beginning to renegotiate employment contracts and wondering what their cost of living allowance increases are going to be. I think we're going to hear more about wage push cost pressures amongst a lot of corporations as we finish out 2024 in the midst of a political cycle. So again, Frank, there's going to be a lot going on. An awful lot going on.
That's for sure. That's certainly an understatement here. We're live with Ken Winans, money manager, president of Winans Investments, and Forbes magazine contributor. Ken, you do a great job in Forbes. Tell us about your latest columns there.
Well, it's funny. This radio show actually inspired the column I did early in December, which is something I've been trying to get across to people that, when you're talking about cryptos in general, and certainly a lot of people are, beginning to warm up to it again. And all that I've always basically been trying to say is, as an old commodity guy, and I've been trading commodities for a long time, no one is saying don't do crypto. All I'm saying is that you should look at other alternatives as well, and that includes commodities. So one of my articles is just on really gravitating towards somebody who might be a crypto trader. You might want to look at that there are money-making opportunities in more conventional commodities, which is where I place crypto. So that's article number 1. But, Frank, the second article, and it's certainly one that I would encourage most of the audience to read, is, the whipsaw we saw over the last 24 months. I just, a lot of people are saying, I'm older now. I just can't handle this volatility. Are there things that I watch, or certainly other people who are market strategists in this industry, are there things that an individual investor could monitor? And so I threw out in the article, a very simple thing to monitor is the 200-day moving average of the S&P 500 and or the Dow Industrial Average, and just look at it monthly and ask yourself a simple question. Is the market above or below where it has been on average for the last 200 days? And if it's below it, a cautionary tale that maybe you should look at protecting yourself and raising some cash. So that's just more of don't get into this buy-only, hold-only fever, because that world is long past. You now have to be more sensible about mitigating your downside risk.
All right, let me ask you about that national debt hitting a record $34 trillion, years ahead of where that was expected to be. At what point will that number matter? We see gold, by the way, hovering at around 2,069. It did hit a record high last month, pulling back a bit today, down about $4 now at 2,069. When should we be concerned about those debt readings? And what about the dollar and gold and the other commodities that you follow so closely?
Well, it's interesting that we bring up what's going on with debt, because one of the things that people could watch is the dollar index, which is it's a basket of currencies from around the world that trade against the dollar. And it is unusual that in the month of December, the dollar traditionally loses value. I can't quite explain why that happens, but it does. But the moral of the story is that, yeah, there are some serious challenges that will be part of the front stage of the political debates as we go into the rest of this year. But I think that, one of the things that, for any of us who have business degrees, there was a theory called the crowding out effect. And it means that if the public side really feels the pinch on financing their debts, you're going to find that it's going to crowd out borrowing from the business side of the equation, which basically means that it constrains growth, which is none of us want that. But Frank, and I brought it up a couple of times, I'm not worried about the federal government's ability to certainly honor its obligations here. And I mean, let's face it, they can print money. I think the real problem is going to be when we look at municipality debt, and I'm talking about state, county, local governments. You listed a whole bunch of issues that LA and LA County is facing. A lot of those issues need to be financed. And I think there's going to be beginning to be pushback on what people are willing to give public agencies locally unless they're willing to pay a lot more in interest. And that's going to really crimp a lot of budgets. And we haven't heard much about it yet, but I dare say it's going to be a big topic as we go through the rest of 2024.
On the air live with money manager Ken Winans, and mercifully, bond yields have eased. Mortgage rates have come down rather dramatically as we headed into 2024 here. Ken, what do you see ahead for real estate? I know you also have a real estate index and still a lot of nervousness in what's happening in commercial real estate. I don't know if you saw the article, I think was in the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times, which was headlined, "Chill in the Housing Market Seeps into Other Industries." Certainly a lot of nervousness, especially with the commercial real estate. Give us your assessment there.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, real estate, you can't call it all one thing. You have to break it into residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural. I mean, there's a litany of things you can break it into. There, the bottom line is that for a long time, people owned real estate investment trusts, also known as REITs, because they paid nice high dividends. And what we're noticing right now is that a lot of people are concerned about the quality of the dividends or the unit payments, as they would call it, going forward. So there's a concern on the real estate investment trust side. But this is what's very fascinating right now about the housing market. I noticed in the fourth quarter last year, and in fact, I think if you go back and listen to anything
The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it all starts with Super Wildcard Weekend, presented by Verizon.
Give me everything you got!
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable!
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts January 13th.
What companies deserve your hard-earned dollar? Which would you want to work for? How can you know if they share your values? Just ask us. Just Capital is a nonprofit that tracks who really means business in supporting workers, customers, communities, the environment, and shareholders. We measure progress, track success, and help them be better. When you see the Just Capital seal, you know what's real, because just business is better business. Visit justcapital.com to learn who makes your dollar count.
Talked about in September, October, I was really quite surprised to see how the home building stocks actually were having a good year. It was shocking with all the bad news out of housing. So this is where it plays in, with the Mr. Market has a wisdom all its own, as Warren Buffett would say. That what's happened with the simple fact that the Fed's probably not going to raise rates anymore, even if there's some wage pressure, inflation. that the people in the mortgage industry are now more comfortable to be able to tell people, look, we now know where we peg our mortgage rates. We're going to expand credit a bit more. And I think that we'll probably find that the spring and summer housing season will basically go pretty well. That's the good news. The bad news, it's very geographic. I think places that certainly, for lack of a better term, the red states, which are drawing in people moving to these areas, companies moving to these areas, you'll find those housing markets will be fine. I think in bigger states, blue states, you'll find that the housing market will be much more dissected between good, bad, and ugly. And I think that, so unfortunately, California fits into that camp. So it's going to be a very mixed bag. But one quick thing on housing, Frank. It used to be the old adage, location, location, location. Now it's remodeled, remodeled, remodeled. People are still having a tough time finding workers and materials to be able to do those big remodeling jobs. So people are really apt to go after a house where it's basically already ready to go, plug and play. They're not really interested in having to do a massive remodeling project in a constrained situation.
There are a lot of people talking about what happened with Apple today, down nearly $7 at $185 and change. A lot of people holding Apple out there, one of the magnificent 7 stocks. What about Apple here, Ken?
Well, it was interesting. Bright and early this morning, my days usually start very early because the stock market opens East Coast time at 9:30. And lo and behold, you had several analysts, especially one from Goldman Sachs, come out and basically had the temerity to say, hey, Apple's shares are overpriced. They're not saying it's bad. They're just saying that with the run it had in the fourth quarter last year, this is now priced for perfection. And that's spilled over to the rest of the market. So here's one thing that everybody should remember. January sets the tone for the year. There's a lot of statistical evidence to support that. But one of the big reasons is that you're going to have corporate earnings. You have the State of the Union address from the president. You have the Federal Reserve and every other central bank around the world making their comments. The Treasury Department will talk about their debt needs. There's a lot of news that's going to hit the market. And I think that many people in the muted response we had today says that people are going to wait for the earnings. They're not willing to commit new capital until they see the whites of those earnings eyes, stealing a phrase from the old Battle of Bunker Hill. They're going to wait and see what's going to happen. But, Frank, there was some other news that hit today. Chevron, which is a member of the Dow Industrial Average. Chevron came out and said they're going to take a massive hit, multi-billion-dollar hit on their California assets. Clearly, we all know the story about how the state views anything involving natural resources. I'm not trying to make a political statement. I'm simply stating fact. Chevron is now writing off their assets. If other energy companies have to do the same thing, we're going to find that it could be a pretty tough earnings season for the energy sector. And at a point in time with what's going on in the Red Sea, this is not the group that we want constraining our domestic capacity. So that's just another thing that seemed to hit the market today, the crosswinds of January.
That is a very important story, and the big headline here is Chevron sees up to a $4 billion hit from California policies, former Gulf of Mexico assets, and Chevron warnings of billions in charges from challenges here, especially in California, to take up about a $4 billion hit in charges. So that is a very big story, and thank you for highlighting that. Coming off 2023, we saw the NASDAQ soaring 43% last year. The Dow gained 13% for the year, and the S&P 500 ended the year with a 24.2% gain. Get your crystal ball out now, Ken. What do you see ahead for this year, and any specific places where you are putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
I really do think the rally this year, assuming the Federal Reserve does not do anything to really affect things, and we don't have any more strange, weird things happen in the economy or the geopolitical sector. With that being said, I think that the rally this year, a bit like we saw in the fall, will be more broad-based. And the thing that was fascinating today, healthcare stocks were really low. I mean, I looked at what was green on the screen. It was healthcare. So clearly there's some people doing some nibbling on the groups that did not have a good year last year. And it would not surprise me, although, people can love their tech stocks. But remember, you love friends and family. You don't love stocks. I think there's going to be some rebalancing going on as we go through this first quarter. And like I said before, minus any other big hits, I think that you're going to find the rally will be more broad-based and people are going to be more in tune with valuation, not just themes of companies.
Terrific, Ken. Well, great to speak with you as our first guest of 2024. I say let's do more in 24, so let's keep it going. And, Ken, it's great to have you with us. Happy New Year to you and everybody there. Thank you very much for taking the call here tonight.
My pleasure, Frank. Happy New Year to you as well and the rest of the audience. Take care.
Thank you very much. It is time to start the new year off right with reminders from our great friend, Attorney Clark Fielding of Fielding Law. If you've been hurt in an accident that was not your fault, it's easy to feel lost in the sea of legal complexities. Fear not. Clark and his team of law sharks are here to navigate the legal waters for you. They have the expertise to tackle any case, big or small. Fielding Law is not just about providing legal advice. They're also about making sure you understand every step of the process. So consider them your partners in justice. Whether you're facing a sea of paperwork, swimming in contractual confusion, or caught in a legal undertow, Clark the Shark is the lifeguard you need. The Fielding Law team is dedicated to protecting your rights and ensuring a smooth journey through the legal currents. So if you dive into the new year, as we all are doing now, remember Fielding Law always has your back. They're not just lawyers, they're your fantastic friends in the legal world. Indeed, legal sharks. Call them now, 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK, or go to clarkthesharklaw.com. Again, that's clarkthesharklaw.com. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Happy New Year, 2024. And that's our motto. We're going to do more in 24. Well, the stock market hitting a record high today for the Dow anyway, up 25.5 points at 37,715. But tech names took a breather, impacting the NASDAQ down 245 points, selling at 14,766. The S&P 500 down 27 at 4,743. Apple shares taking a hit on an analyst downgrade, dragging down the whole tech sector. We saw Apple shares down nearly $7 on the day, back to $185 and change. Gold pulling back $4.30 to $2,069. Gold prices predicted to hit record highs around $2,300 in 2024, according to analysts talking today. We also see another report showing Americans living paycheck to paycheck own 60% of credit card debt. 40% of consumers living paycheck to paycheck have high credit scores, according to a new survey out today. Fox Business News reporting that. In the crypto space, we see Bitcoin back above 45,000 today, up 160 at 45,215. Ethereum up $1 at 2,366. Doge right now at 9 cents. Taking a look at the price of oil, it was bouncing around today, and let's see if we can bring up the latest here on the price of oil with nervousness in the Red Sea and, of course, throughout the Middle East. We see oil right now up 6 cents at $70.44 a barrel. The volatility index, the so-called fear index, moving up about a point at 1,300, make that 1,320 at the moment. Bitcoin right now at 150 at 45,205. We're keeping an eagle eye on that one, as Bitcoin is the highest we've seen in more than a year. Sad news for a local small business. We see popular Los Angeles bakery chain Sweet Lady Jane has abruptly closed its doors. According to KTLA, the bakery has announced today it was its last day on New Year's Eve. The company announcing on its website and social media that after 35 years, we are closing our doors. Sweet Lady Jane, last day of business on New Year's Eve. Despite the customer loyalty, the bakers said that the sales were not strong enough to continue to do business here in California while servicing lease obligations and paying its employees a living wage. All were too onerous. Bakery, this is among many that were not able to raise the dough. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. Good evening. Crime very much in focus as we head into 2024. You see that video with Ian Ziering? Yep, that's how he pronounces his name, Ian Ziering. Remember him from Beverly Hills 90210? Well, he was attacked over the weekend on Hollywood Boulevard. Another big story you might have seen, a stolen Maserati has been found in a homeless emplacement in Los Angeles. What was a stolen Maserati doing there? Apparently a lot of other things were going on in that homeless encampment. Let's discuss the latest crime reports as well as the news that LA DA George Gascon is facing a growing list of challengers for the DA's office this year. Let's bring in the Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer, and at last check, about 56 years of service now to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Thank Thank you, Frank. Good evening to you. How are you this evening on this new year?
Yes, sir. Wonderful to have you with us on day 2 of 2024. Hope you and your family had a great holiday season. Appreciate you joining us here to kick off the new year here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Give us your reaction, first of all, to what happened there on Hollywood Boulevard with some motorbikers attacking a famous actor right there on Hollywood Boulevard over the weekend.
Oh, Frank, it's another situation that we see happening more and more, where an out-of-control population of criminal activity taking place, whether it's a smash.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it all starts with Super Wildcard Weekend, presented by Verizon.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wildcard Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts January 13th.
Business has always been about turning a profit, making money. But can it stand for something more? Something beyond dollars and cents? We think so. We think that today, business has a higher calling, a purpose to be fair and just, to do right by their workers, customers, communities, and the environment. And it turns out companies successful doing that also do better for their bottom line. When you see the Just Capital seal, it means this company is a force for good. Visit justcapital.com to learn more.
Smash and grab, or assaulting, a robbery, a grand theft auto. It's a continuing saga, and we have a depleted police department. I understand that 80 officers, supervisors, etc., retired as of January 1st. That's 80 fewer than they had prior to this time. And the latest statistics had not been produced, but the statistics as of the latter part of December, we had in Los Angeles City up to the 23rd of December, 323 murders. We've had 25,979 cars stolen. So we have some serious problems here in the City of the Angels, and law and order is a continuing problem. We don't have the resources to really address it properly, and potential more victims happen.
Certainly, Hollywood Boulevard is kind of a Times Square, kind of an atmosphere, a very big tourist area with a lot of people from all over the world there. And if you do go to Times Square in New York, especially this time of the year, you see cops all over the place. That does not seem to be the case there in Hollywood.
Well, that's true, not only Hollywood, but the rest of the city. We've got divisions all over the city of Los Angeles. We don't have enough officers. And the problem is we don't see recruitment increasing any significant number. I know that the Sheriff's Department is trying to hire 1,000. The Highway Patrol is trying to hire 1,000. We're trying to hire 500. The problem is people do not want to be involved in law enforcement for a variety of reasons. And at the same time, we see the criminal activity continuing. The smash and grabs continue. We saw a situation take place in the south part of this South Bay, where we saw thousands of people, teenagers, swarmed a shopping center. They had to call for mutual aid from adjoining police departments to come contain the situation. We've got very serious crime problems as we enter this new year.
And it looks like the laws are changing. What's your reaction? We heard this on the news here. I think Tom Looney had it. That officers are not allowed to ask, do you know why I pulled you over?
Well, the state legislature and the governor really have no focus on reality. They passed a law that says when a police officer stops someone, they need to tell the person, I stopped you for speeding. I stopped you for running a red light. Not why did I stop you? They have to then, and it's now law in California, where the officers, and they'll comply, sir, I stopped you for speeding. You're going 50 and a 25. I see your license, insurance, registration, etc. This is now a law in California. Our state legislature has no idea about the criminal element in our state and the problems associated with it. They're more concerned about controlling law enforcement officers from doing their job than they are with controlling the criminal element. They want to close state prisons, just have a situation where people do as they wish to do. So in addition to that, the most ridiculous I see happening now, and Los Angeles could be one of the cities where we're going to have cameras established throughout the city where they're going to take a photo of the speeding car, a photo of the car. Who's responsible for that ticket? Not the driver, but the owner of the car. How's that going to address drivers' behavior? This state, this city, has some serious issues with logic and common sense.
On the air live with the Honorable Dennis Zine. And another big story, a stolen Maserati ended up in a homeless encampment in Los Angeles. What's your reaction to that, and what was going on there?
Well, Frank, not a surprise. And that was stolen out of the downtown area and taken to a homeless encampment and stripped. They were in the process of stripping the car. Obviously a very, very expensive car. But the criminal activity in that area continues. This is just one more aspect where they steal a car, and I think it was at one of the venues in downtown Los Angeles where they stole it from, and then they're stripping it to sell the parts, whatever they want, what they want to do with it. But the problem is, whether it's the car, the home broken into, people getting robbed, actors getting assaulted on Hollywood Boulevard, it runs the gamut. The problem is people aren't safe, and now we have a CCW opportunity in Los Angeles, but now they put so many restrictions that basically you can keep it in your home. So while we try to pass laws to help the people, those laws are countered by some of the ridiculous procedures that they put in the state of California. It's an anti-gun state, but it's not an anti-criminal state. It's let the criminals run free and poor for the poor people.
All right, people are outraged, of course, by what's going on, and you've kept us well informed and have articulated fantastically what a lot of people are thinking at this moment in the face of all these crazy things going on out there. Now we see a growing list of challengers for the DEA's office. George Gascon facing a growing list of challengers. What do you think is going to happen this year?
Well, let me say this, Frank, in all honesty, in all candor, if George Gascon is reelected as the District Attorney of Los Angeles County, we might just throw in the towel and just surrender everything. Open your doors, open your business, let the hoodlums take anything and everything they want. If he gets reelected, it's hopeless in the county of Los Angeles. If he does not get defeated, we are absolutely doomed for failure in the county of Los Angeles. 88 cities will suffer the consequences. Good cities, bad cities, rich cities, poor cities. Every city in this county will suffer significant loss if Gascon gets reelected. He's more concerned about getting people out of prison than holding criminals responsible for their activities. So hopefully people will learn from this and vote for one of the other candidates. I don't care who you vote for. Vote for anyone other than George Gascon when it comes up to that election. And he is running for re-election along with other people, including Superior Court judges, a number of well-known prosecutors running for that seat. It's a very, very important election coming up.
Certainly, it's going to be an important year with all of this unfolding. And getting back to what happened to Ian Ziering, he got out of his car after those little motorbikes were buzzing around him. Are those street legal, or what happened there? And should he have gotten out of the car?
Well, they're not legal, number one. Number two, he shouldn't have gotten out of his car. Obviously, he confronted them, and this is what happened. When you confront something like that and you've got a mob scene with these thugs, this is exactly what happened. So I'm glad he didn't shoot anyone. It doesn't resort to that, shouldn't result in that. But the fact of the matter is, he gets out of his car, he gets assaulted, and that's not acceptable. But that's the lawlessness that we have happening here in the county of Los Angeles. This lawlessness doesn't stop. Broad daylight, people around on Hollywood Boulevard. And it doesn't matter if it's Hollywood Boulevard or in some dark alley. The criminal element is preying on people, and oftentimes they're repeat offenders because they know nothing happens. This no bail is an absolute joke. People get arrested, they sign a ticket, they don't show up in court. It's really a farce for a criminal justice system. It's all about the criminal and nothing about justice. A very sad commentary.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, thank you very much for your service. We salute you and all the officers you work with. Dennis, thank you very much for joining us live here. The Honorable Dennis Zine, former LAPD Sergeant, current Reserve Officer, and former LA City Council member Dennis Zine. Thank you very much for taking the call. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, Frank. Thank you much.
Thank you very much. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KBC. Happy New Year. Big news this morning. The president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, resigned today after fierce criticism of the university's response to the Hamas attack on Israel and backlash from her disastrous congressional testimony last month, spiraling into allegations of plagiarism and doubts about her personal academic integrity. This according to the Harvard newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, the first to report the resignation of Harvard's president, Claudine Gay, today. Gay's tenure of just 6 months and 2 days, the shortest in Harvard's history. University Provost Alan N. Garber will lead in the interim until a new president of Harvard is selected. Bill Ackman, the CEO at Pershing Square Capital Management, had called for the presidents of Harvard, Penn, and MIT to resign following their testimony at a House anti-Semitism hearing last month. that was chaired by Elise Stefanik. Harvard University President Claudine Gay's resignation over plagiarism will be just the beginning of the reckoning, according to the House GOP conference chairwoman Elise Stefanik. Spoke to the New York Post today, vowing that Republicans will carry out a long overdue cleansing of higher education's institutional rot, in her words. Joining us live now is prominent public relations, media expert, and best-selling author Michael Levine with reaction to this big story here tonight. Michael Levine, Happy New Year, sir. Thank you very much for joining us live here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Well, thank you for sharing your valuable audience with me, dear Frank. It's a joy to be with you, and happy New Year to you.
Wonderful to have you with us. Of course, you've been a longtime guest on this program. We value your expertise. And following that disastrous hearing chaired by Congresswoman Stefanik last month, give us your reaction to this latest news here.
Well, I predicted it would happen. I thought it would happen sooner than it did. Miss Gray is a disgrace. And what is most disgraceful, maybe, other than her behavior, which was pretty disgraceful, in her resignation letter today, rather than take responsibility for anything she did, minimizing anti-Semitism, committing serial plagiarism, anything damaging Harvard to a degree that it's hard to imagine, she called her critics racist. Now, I think this is a great thing because it exposes exactly what I think many people are getting very aware of, and that is that this is part of a whole poisonous DEI ideology. If you disagree with somebody, the only thing that they say about you is you're a racist. Now, there's no evidence in any way that it's racism, but you don't need any evidence in the DEI ecosystem. So I think that her letter, as embarrassing, and I don't know whether when I read the letter, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was so pathetic. But it does expose exactly what people like her are up to. And, it's really shameful. She did great damage to what was historically a great institution.
And what we understand at this point is that she's going to continue to be on the Harvard faculty.
Oh, she's going to continue getting $900,000 a year. Can you imagine if this was imagine for a minute, Frank, that this was a white Republican male who had done identical thing to what she did. I mean, first of all, they would have been fired. He would have been fired in 5 minutes. Second, I hardly think they'd be getting $900,000. That's almost $1 million after she did this level of devastation. But it shows you the hypocrisy. It shows you how bad when this Republican congresswoman said about the rot. Rot is not a word that is overstated. It is far worse than most people, most average Americans who are just going about their business know. And you're helping, I think, expose it, and many other media outlets. It's just, it's unsustainable.
Getting reaction here from prominent public relations, media expert, and best-selling author Michael Levine to the big news that the president of Harvard University has resigned following her disastrous congressional testimony last month, as well as plagiarism accusations, which have mounted even as late as today, as a matter of fact. And now there are calls for the third president who was part of that congressional testimony to resign as well.
First of all, I've received many calls, many emails from people I know, friends, associates. They've asked me for my reaction. My reaction, as simply put as possible, is 2 down, 1 to go. And by the way, Frank, I got a the first 2 calls I got when this news came out happened to be, just serendipitously, from 2 African Americans. One
highly educated, one more working class. Now, these are two individuals, don't know each other, and both of them said the same thing. What an embarrassment this woman is. So even in the African-American community, I sense there is a growing feeling. Now, it's not fully established, but it's growing, that this kind of divisiveness is bringing embarrassment not only to Harvard, but to African Americans by calling everyone who disagrees with them a racist, no matter what. So I was very heartened by those two telephone calls by African American friends. Just interesting.
Michael, you're a great friend, and we appreciate you joining us live here tonight on this big story. That is prominent public relations, media expert, and best-selling author Michael Levine. Michael, Happy New Year, and thank you again very much for taking the call here tonight. This is Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
The NFL playoffs are almost here, and it all starts with Super Wildcard Weekend, presented by Verizon.
Give me everything you got.
12 teams, 6 games, 3 days, and one epic weekend that kicks off with a Saturday doubleheader, followed by a Sunday tripleheader, and ends with a Wild Card Monday.
Unbelievable.
The road to Super Bowl 58 starts January 13th.